Welcome to the Bigfoot Society. In this episode, we listen to a few callers from a recent Bigfoot Encounters live from the Bigfoot Society YouTube channel. A horrifying encounter in the Shasta and Lassen area of California and East Texas Bigfoot is what's in store. If you've experienced something similar to what these callers have or have more information regarding Bigfoot or other cryptids in the same areas, please reach out immediately to me after this episode. Remember, your encounter could be the key to unlocking this mystery once and for all, so please don't hesitate to contact me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. I'm going to have to call Jeffrey back. There we go.
Hello?
Hi, is this Jeffrey?
It is.
Hey, Jeffrey, it's Jeremiah. Did you happen to fill out the guest release form real quick? Oh, we lost him. I'm going to try to call him back.
Hello.
Hey, Jeffrey, this is Jeremiah calling you back. How's it going?
It's going well.
Perfect. Did you actually, before we go any further, we're getting a little bit of feedback. Am I on speaker or something like that?
Yeah, I turned mine off.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I'm good now. Were you able to fill out the guest release form real quick, Jeffrey?
I was.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'm very interested, and the rest of the chat is interested in what you've experienced. So I'll go ahead and let you take the floor, my friend.
Well, it's a little convoluted. Last summer, I'm a professional illustrator and artist and writer. And wife and I had separated and sold our house, and for the summer, I'm from Northern California. I decided to kind of camp my way down the Cascades to hang out with some old friends down in the Redding area, and I'm a lifelong outdoorsman, and I needed to get away and just chill. It had been a rough spring for her and I, and everything's good with us, by the way. It's not a bad thing in a way, but anyway, so I needed to go chill. So in June, after a family ceremony over in Eureka, I decided to head over towards a place that friends and I had camped out for many years. Now, I'm not going to name any particular places. I'm going to keep that secret because I plan on going back after what I experienced. And I don't want a bunch of people going there.
No problem.
Where was I? So a place we had camped out for many years in the backcountry. I'll say it's between Shasta and Lassen and leave it at that. About 6,000 elevation backcountry in June. And of course, last year was a very snowy year for California, much like it's going on right now, actually. But as I got back farther and farther into the backcountry, going up logging roads to this place, a lake that we've camped out for decades, friends and I got to a place where I couldn't go any further because of snow. And so I parked and got out and walked down the road farther, thinking maybe the road would open up again. And it didn't. It was just packed with snow. But as I was looking around, I always look for tracks and things like that, and not necessarily Bigfoot tracks. But coming up out of this valley where this lake is was, I don't know, 100 feet of tracks in the snow, which I took video and photos of. I actually started my own little YouTube channel to share some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about. I couldn't get any farther back to this place. And by the way, over the years, we have heard wood knocks back there, and I have found tracks back there in previous years. Anyway, so I ended up camping there in the snow thinking, well, there's tracks right there. I don't need to go back down to the lake. And camped for the night, and nothing happened. And by the way, I camp quite a bit by myself in the backcountry. It doesn't bother me. So I go on down to Chico, see buddies and friends. I took the photos and videos, of course, which was freaking all my friends out. 17-inch tracks. And I'm a big guy, by the way. I'm 6'3" and 240, and with a size 13. And these tracks dwarf mine. Anyway, I come back up to Seattle, see friends. I live in the Seattle area and do some stuff. I have a gig down in LA for the month of August working on a film, doing concept art. So I've got time to kill. And I decide now that I have a gig lined up, I have a plan. But I have the whole month of July to kind of, just kill. And the tracks have been on my mind quite a bit. But now I need to work on some art. So I decided to go up to a place that I'd not been to in a long time. And it's a very tiny little campground, not, I would say, within 10 miles of the place where I found the snow tracks. And this is now mid-July. And I plan on going up for 3 nights. And this is July 16th. I arrive at this place about noon. It's beautiful. Reading was 111 degrees. It was 72 where I got to camp, so that was wonderful. I set up camp, I get some wood. I sleep in the back of my truck, in a canopy truck. I just make a nice bed back there, leave the tailgate down, pointing at the fire. That's generally how I camp. As evening went on, and by the way, the place seemed weird right off the bat, very quiet. I always look around for tracks just to see what company I might have, as in bears or cougars or whatever, deer. It's just one of my things I do. And I didn't see any tracks, which I found freaky. Very freaky, very quiet, very strange to me right off the bat. It's beautiful up there, very quiet, very beautiful. So I'd go about my day. But that evening, I'm sitting by my campfire, and boy, hair standing up on me already. It's dusk, it's dark. You can see the sky a little bit, but the underbrush, the trees, and I'm also down in a tiny little valley that's actually the headwaters of a drainage. And it's just a little valley, really. It's not very big at the top of the mountain ridges at about 6,200 feet. Again, you can't see the underbrush, the forest around me, just my campfire. Across this, about 30 feet in front of me is a dry creek bed, which is the top of this drainage, but in places is water, but in front of me it's dry. And the creek bed's 5-6 feet wide at the most, filled with pebbles and rocks, just to give you the idea. And across that creek through some trees is a large meadow, which there's photos of up on my YouTube channel. There's a large meadow, beautiful meadow. It's just a big seep spring is what it is. Somewhere at the top of that tree line above the meadow, I hear something scream and bark. And it's not super loud, but it's plenty loud enough that I can hear it. And I've never heard anything like it. And I'll come back to that in a minute, because I actually went through a library of listening to vocalizations, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. Anyway, I'm like, well, what the hell is that? And immediately after that, crash, bang, boom, snap, trees, limbs, brush, something big and something pissed off. I'm like, well, okay, this is interesting. And then again, I can't see anything beyond my campfire, my truck, my picnic table right there with me, deep fire pit. Something in the creek bed in front of me scatters pebbles and rocks. And this creek bed is 40 feet in front of me, and I can't see it. I don't know what it is. And all this has just happened, boom, boom, all in succession. I don't scare easy. I camp by myself all the time in the backcountry. It does not bother me. I am scared blankety. I do something I've never done in my life. I get in the front of my truck, and I spend the night in the front of my truck. It scared the hell out of me. I'm shaking right now as I talk about it. I get up the next day, and I'm like, wow. So the art project's kind of now out of my mind completely. I'm supposed to be sketching art while I'm up here and chilling, but now this happened. It's like, oh, wow. So I checked the camp over, and at the other end of my camp, at maybe little campground, I should say, there's just a couple of places there to camp. It's a nice little campground. There's a pipe that comes out of the ground with some spring water coming out of it. And near that pipe, and there was no tracks there the day before as I looked, is a fresh 15-inch track in the dirt, which I take videos and photos of. and it's perfect. I actually send it to Cliff at the Oregon Museum there in Oregon. Cliff, I can't think of his last name, but I know you know who I mean. And we talked for an hour on the phone about this later. Anyway, I find also by the pipe, the waters or the ground's a little muddy where it comes out. It quickly disappears into the ground because it's, late summer and getting dry. But there's also a big muddy footprint where you can see the toes because it's on a little bit of a slope, have pushed into the mud as it stepped on up the hill. Yes, that's correctly. Thank you. And I take photos of all that stuff. I spend the day looking around, and I keep looking at that meadow. I can go down and, 50 yards from my camp and look up into it. It's a really big meadow. But I call them inconclusive tracks, like they're old or weathered, but they look like, and I keep looking at the meadow, but it scares me. I don't want to go up in that meadow where that thing came down from. That evening, dusk, same scenario, dusk, and it comes out again up there and screams and barks. Bark is a better term for it. It's not feline like a cougar. Bears sure don't do that. There's coyotes there. It's not a coyote. What else could it be? So no crashing and banging, though, just the bark yell and nothing else. I do sleep in the back of my truck that night. I do get the courage to get back there. Third day, I finish up art and stuff, and I'm thinking, I'm going to push the envelope a little bit tonight. So I go stand and sit in front of that meadow at dusk. Maybe I can catch a picture or something, who knows? But I get scared. Again, I don't get scared. It's not my nature up in these sort of places to be frightened, but this spooky as hell. And over the 3 days, it's continued to be quiet and weird. Definitely a feeling of being watched because there's slopes on either side of my little camp, up on either side of me, above the meadow and back behind me. Even a steeper slope full of trees that I can't see up. So I walk back up the road and I go, well, I'll walk on up the road past my camp. I'll go up the way where I found that dirt print the day. And I move very quietly for a big guy, lifelong outdoorsman. I'm moving up the road. It's very quiet. It's not quite as dark as it was, the previous 2 nights. I'm moving around while it's still a little bit light. And let me catch my breath here. I'm starting to shake a little bit. After all this time, I'm still processing all this. But about 30 or 40 feet up the slope, the steeper slope to my right in the trees there, something breaks cover, and it's big, and it's loud, and it's crashing, and it's banging. I can't see it. Rocks and dirt drop down to my feet from down through the trees, small rocks and pebbles, just, not very big. And this thing tears up through the trees up above me. Again, I can't see anything. And it stops, I don't know, it can't be stopping far. 50 yards maybe, 40 yards, I'm guessing. It wasn't racing up the hill for very long, so it didn't get very far up. And it stops, and it screams and barks down at me. And it's right up there above me, and it's loud. The branches and limbs that it was breaking as it tore up the hill. It's big. Again, it's not a cat or a bear or a coyote or a raccoon or a turkey. It's something huge and pissed off. And it just screamed and barked down at me. And stupid me, I have my phone on me, but I am frozen. Now, you've read or listened to other stories where people either faint or they start running like crazy or any of that, right? Well, stupid me, I freeze right there. It's almost like a predatory shock sort of thing where they scream and bark at you and you're kind of stunned for a moment. I don't think it was that sort of effect. Purposely, but I felt, shocked. I looked down at my truck, which is, 50, 60 yards away. So I start walking slowly back down towards that truck. I'm not running, I'm walking slowly. And that thing parallels me up there along the ridgeline, 40, 50 yards above me, 30 yards. And it screams and barks at me, breaking and snapping limbs and branches 5 or 6 times, paralleling me along that ridge while I get back down to my truck. And while I'm get back to my camp, it breaks and snaps stuff up there for 20 or 30 minutes, and then all goes quiet. And I'm like, are you effing kidding me? What the hell was that thing? I'm like, my God. I spend the night in the front of my truck again. No way am I sleeping in back of my truck. And in fact, where I camp in other places, I often sleep on the ground. I'll lay a tarp out. If it's not raining, if the weather's nice, my son and I will just take a bag and tarp, and we'll lay on the ground. No way I would do that in this place. The next morning I leave. I have to go down to LA and do my thing. While I'm down there working on this project, half of me is, well, 3/4 probably is thinking about what happened. I'm trying to process all that. It's just, what I told you is what happened. So imagine you're there trying to process, it's just crazy. So 1st of September, I'm going to come back up to Seattle. Of course, by this time, I have a little bit of a plan. I bought 3 trail cams, and I bought some nice vision goggles. And when I get up to Redding, I'm going to buy a week's supply, and I'm going to go up for a week. And I'm going to have an artist friend meet me for the last couple of nights. So up on September 4th on a Monday, up I go. I get up there, I make camp. And now, I'm not thinking about art or anything. I'm thinking about this. So I start looking for tracks. Walking around, shooting video of everything I do, every little excursion out of my camp, I video. I'm finding tracks. I'm starting to take photos. I keep looking at the Meadow. And there's an area adjacent to the Meadow that we end up terming the thicket. It's really dense bush with the creek running down, this dry creek that now has water in it down at that area. Runs down through it. And I keep looking into there, and it's very scary. The Meadow thicket where this thing originally came down from is real spooky. Well, the whole area is spooky to me now. Nothing happens except for me taking pics and stuff. Very quiet, very beautiful. Nothing that night. Nothing the next day. Me going around, finding more tracks, taking photos. On Wednesday, the hill behind me where that thing was screaming and yelling at me and paralleling me, stalking me almost. I go up one of the steep trails up that way. I'm following old tracks. And with, 15, 20 feet of me, a rock comes down from high above, thudding down through the trees. And it wasn't a pine cone. It wasn't something bouncing down from some loose rock or something. It was thrown. It arced out up above and dropped down. And my son told me later, he goes, "You know what that meant, Dad?" And I go, "No, what?" And he goes, "That meant turn around." And which is what I did. I turned around and went back down the trail. Camp. So this is Wednesday. Again, no yelling, no barking, none of that. Well, I'm finding tracks everywhere. Also, when I camp, I'm quiet. I have a dark 4x4. I tarp the back end in case it rains. Very quiet. Don't slam the door. I try to blend in with my surroundings. Wednesday comes around, and I'm doing the same thing. I decide to venture over towards the thicket. Actually, that might have been on Wednesday. I venture over toward the thicket, and I actually get the balls to inch my way in there ways. And it's very dry, so you're making noise. Even me, who's very good at this, I'm making noise. Snap a branch here or whatever. And as I inch my way in there, something, and it's on the video, something snaps a big branch, and it's loud. And it's within 30 or 40 feet in the bush there, which I can't see into. It's just bush. But it's something moved and snapped a branch. And also at this point, I smell a kind of a wet animal smell. Not bad, but not good, that kind of thing. But in the middle of the day, which is the only way I would come over here to the thicket, is in the middle of the day. Be a great place to hide. It's cool. For like 20 minutes, we play a cat and mouse game. It moves. It's very stealthy. It moves and stops. I hear it moving. I move a little bit and stop. I know it knows I'm there, and I know it knows I know that it's there. And I shoot video the whole time, and I fly back out of there. Nothing happens. I just hear the branches and it moving there in front of me and smell this animal smell. Now, if it was a deer, it probably would have broke cover and run. I don't know. It might have been an animal, but it didn't smell like, deer's sure not going to smell. A bear might from that distance, but I doubt that too. So anyway, the next day comes. This is Thursday. My friend's going to show up the next day on Friday. He'll be there for Friday and Saturday. Thursday, go about my business. I do more excursions, find more stuff. I actually go up to the edge of the meadow and find big, long, stride, muddy trails going up into the meadow. A lot more photos. That night, again, I've not heard any barking or no branch breaking. None of that's happened so far. Just, me going around taking photos of tracks. That night, laying in the back of my tailgate, tailgate's down, I'm laying there, and I drift off to sleep. And it's a deep fire pit, so I can have a good fire going. Now, this is probably the spookiest thing that even over the July stuff, this really spooks the hell out of me. Around 11 or 12, you know how you hear sometimes something going on before it sinks into your brain that there's a noise or something, and you wake up and you hear something going on. It's kind of taking a minute or so for it to wake you up. Well, I'm woken by a very shrill, loud whistle. And it's right there in camp across the fire from me, right on the edge of my fire. I can't see it, but it's loud. The classic shrill. I think it might have been Meldrum described it. No, it wouldn't have been Meldrum. It might have been Green describing it like a teenager with two fingers in his mouth blowing the whistle. And it does it another time, and it does it again. And by that time, I was asleep. I'm coming awake. I'm trying to find my phone. I get it turned on. By that time, it had died off. Maybe saw me moving. I don't know. But it woke me up to those whistles. Loud. And it wasn't a friggin' turkey at midnight waking me up. I mean, I don't know what the hell else it could be. And by the way, I've never seen anybody up there except some CAL FIRE people who I talked to, who also told me that they were freaked out by the place, which I found very interesting. Anyway, I'm awake now, but I'm afraid to move. I don't want to get in the front of my truck. I don't want to move. I don't want to get out the tailgate to the back of the truck. But nothing else happens. I eventually fall back to sleep. That thing came into my camp and woke me up. The next morning, 10 feet from my tailgate, I find a fresh track. That thing came over and maybe even looked in at me. I don't know. It's right there in camp with me. Andy shows up the next day. He is immediately spooked by the whole area. We end up going way up into the meadow. We shoot a lot of video. We find tracks. We find more tracks. We find scat that we don't recognize. That night, we get up the courage, because I hadn't the courage to go anywhere after dark except right into my truck. We walk around a little bit with the night vision. We don't see anything. Trail cams so far hadn't picked up anything. We go all over the meadow. That next day on Saturday, we drive around the back of the mountain just to take a break. It's a short drive. We stop at some areas with a drop-off and a beautiful view. And sure enough, in the hard ash of the hillside there are tracks. I try to walk on that little, it's like cement trying to walk on it. I slid right back down it. And this thing easily just stepped right down through that and right onto the road and on about his business. So we get out and we look around that area. And sure enough, we find tracks all over the place there, which I take video and photo of. We set up a drone to look around. We didn't see anything, but that whole time we probably shot 8 hours of video that week. The next day, Sunday, we leave and come back up north. And that's my story. So,
Jeff, that is incredible. I can definitely tell while you were telling the story that you have been through a lot. And I don't know how you would even stick around that area after experiencing the whistle across the campfire from you.
Well, my friends told me about the July episodes. They would have left immediately after the barking, yelling, screaming, snapping. But you know what? One, stupidly brave, I guess, for some things. But my curiosity is what got me. Needed to know more. Right. And when I came back in September, and Andy said this, he goes, and Cliff also commented about this when we had our long talk. He goes, it remembered you maybe, because I was finding the same tracks in September. I was finding other size tracks, but I was finding this one distinct track that I found in that dirt in July. I was finding it again in September. So that same individual was in the area. And Cliff thinks it remembered me. One, it was probably curious. This is quoting Cliff for someone, paraphrasing. One, it remembered me in September, curious about me, why I would come back and I camped the same spot and the same, everything the same. Quiet, dark, everything exactly the same. He goes, one, it remembered you. One, it was probably curious at why you didn't run screaming down the road like a normal person would have done, or left, or whatever. You stuck around. And then in September, when it might have been watching you the whole time. There were a couple of hunters that had come through, just scouting areas. And so there were a few more people that week than I saw in July. Maybe it was just more wary. And finally, after a few days of me by myself, it finally came into camp and woke me up. Cliff thinks it was trying to communicate in a way, maybe. My friend Andy laughingly said, maybe it's a female. Who knows?
Well, one thing's for sure. If it wanted to take you out, it could have taken you out. So I would probably agree with Cliff that it was trying to communicate with you because, dude, it could have taken you out easy. It was so close. But,
I was asleep, sleeping truck when it, if it looked in the tailgate at me, so I'm laying right there. It could easily grab me.
Just for classification for later, did you say this is in the Shasta area?
Between Shasta and Lassen.
Sorry, what's the second word again? I'm not overly familiar with out there.
Mount Lassen.
Mount Lassen. Okay, gotcha.
It's the most southern volcano of the Cascades. It's east of Redding.
And that's Mount Shasta?
Mount Shasta is north on I-5, north towards Oregon. If you go east from Redding, you'll see Lassen. It's a volcanic national park, actually, the first national park.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Lassen Volcanic National Park. Thank you for being patient with me. I'm an Iowa guy, so, we don't have many volcanoes out here.
It's all, you get up out of Redding, 20 miles, and it's all wilderness.
It's beautiful out there. Are you planning to go back at a later time?
I am, yes.
Wow. Please keep us
actually,
up to date.
When I got down to LA, a producer friend actually took me in the studio and recorded me while the thing was still fresh in my mind.
Oh, that's great.
And he might be trying to get some funding for me to go back up.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going back up. It's got the curiosity bug in me now too much. And it didn't hurt me. Not saying it won't. I mean, I might not ever have an interaction with it again, but I think true. I'm going to.
Wow.
I really do. I think I stumbled into a spot. I actually call it SASQUATCH Sanctuary. I think it's just a special place that no one knows about. People go through there. People have camped at this place. There's some that go through occasionally, but no one has experienced what I'm experiencing.
Absolutely.
I don't think, anyway.
Well, Jeff, thank you for calling in, and please keep us in the loop for if anything in the future happens. And we'll definitely check out your channel. I've got It looks like we got a few people else that have called in, so we need to check in with them. But Jeff, please, if anything else happens, contact me directly, bigfootsociety@gmail.com, so that we can get an update of what's happening to you. Okay.
Thanks for your patience for the long call.
Oh, it was incredible, Jeff. Thank you again for sharing what's on your heart. You have a great night, sir.
You bet. Take care.
Oh, that was an incredible account from Jeff. Let's go ahead and call someone back. Let's see who we got. Okay.
Hello.
Hi, is this Jared?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Jared, this is Jeremiah calling you from Bigfoot Society. How's it going?
Good, Jeremiah. How are you?
Awesome. Yeah, so I got your message. You tried to call in, and it sounds like you have a few encounters or things that have happened to you. You are more than welcome to share what you'd like to if you've experienced some interactions with Bigfoot.
Yeah, definitely. I guess it kind of goes back to around 1987 thereabouts, and this was in East Texas. I live in eastern Oklahoma now, but I remember the first time was I had just joined the National Guard, but I hadn't been to basic training or any of that yet, and I was issued a lot of equipment, and it was perfect for camping and things like that. So that's what I did. I took all that equipment and told my best friend, hey, let's go camping. Let's test this stuff out. And we did. We went to a place outside of Fruitvale, Texas, which back then was a lot less crowded with city folk. It's kind of gotten like that now, but there's still some good places where there's not many people. And that's where we were then. So we went and we camped out behind where his parents were renting 160 acres. That was probably a 40-acre sweet potato field that also had the rest of it basically woods. And then behind that was more woods interspersed with fields, hills, and basically wild country. At the time, there weren't a whole lot of deer or wild hogs, but tons of fish in the creeks. And there were a lot of creeks in that area, the main one being Mill Creek. So we took it upon ourselves and went out there, and the way we used to hunt back then and camp, everything else was we didn't take food. If we didn't kill something, we didn't eat. And that was part of our, I guess, encouragement to make sure that we became better hunters, woodsmen, and everything else. So we killed birds. Not going to tell you what kind, but we had birds, we had food. He got a rabbit, which was unusual for him because he wasn't that great a shot. But anyway, we ended up building us a fire, cooking our meat, and he had actually brought a guitar on about a mile high. Wasn't too bad, but he'd carry his guitar with us, and after we ate, he strummed the guitar, sang some songs, and we were tired, long day. We went to sleep. Well, after a while, we weren't totally asleep yet, I guess, but we heard what sounded like something being thrown into the creek, which was probably 40 yards from us. We were slightly uphill from it, but we could tell by the sound that it wasn't something in the water making the noise. It was something being thrown into the water. And if you've been around water and out in the country enough, you know the difference. And if it's a beaver, yeah, that's a big loud slap with the tail. This wasn't any of that. This was something being thrown in the water. And in that part of East Texas, there's not really rocks. There's tons of trees, but there's not rocks. So something being thrown in there was going into the water with a big, decent-sized splash. So we listened to it, and it was maybe, it's hard to say the distance, but it was just audible enough that we could hear it over the fire. And it steadily got closer to us. And it's like, what in the heck? There's nobody, no houses in this valley area that we're in, even though we're up on a little bit of a hill. Sometimes that area floods, and it's like there's no houses. There's not typically anybody out there. So we're laying there listening, and steadily the splashing keeps coming towards us, closer and closer. Then we hear it, and we're actually kind of facing north, the way we're laying on this hill. Then we hear it coming from the south. We didn't hear any vocalizations, anything else. We just heard the splashes. We hear it start coming from the south too. And that never came to our position, but the ones coming from the north eventually got right by us at the creek, which, like I said, is about 40 yards away. And we had, at the time, like a 4D cell mag light, which was primo back in the day. And we're shining those lights. And all we can do, the best we can do, is catch the end of a splash. But it's still not the splash that a fish or anything like that from under the water would make. We can't see eye shine. We can't see anything on the other side of the bank. Lord knows back then those flashlights weren't that good. We can't see anything other than ripples and the ends of splashes. And, you know, we were armed. And I stood up and I'm like, hey, anybody over there? You better stop it. I'm going to start shooting, which I did not intend to shoot, but it's just the way we were, the mentality. But nothing happened. After that, after a little bit, it stopped and we never heard another thing. We ended up going to bed, going to sleep, nothing else the rest of the night. And I wish to God that we would have gone across the creek the next morning and looked, because the only thing I can guess is maybe whoever, whatever was doing it was making mud balls and throwing those in. Because other than that, I couldn't tell you what it was.
Oof. Did you ever go back to that area later in life?
Oh, yeah. His parents lived there. So, you know, we kind of, in the summers and any time I had off, because I live close to Dallas, and anytime we were able to get together, I would go over there. And I would even, back then, I would pay the money to go on the bus, and him and his parents would pick me up. So there's a couple other stories about that area.
I was just going to ask. Yeah.
Okay. There was another time, and it was almost exactly the same scenario and everything, except for nothing happened, and we camped in the same basic area, not quite in the same place. But that night, I woke up and I thought that if that train's loud, sorry. But I woke up. I don't know why. I guess I said something or whatever, but I saw what I thought was my buddy, same guy, just over the top of the hill, go across where the moonlight was, which wasn't much moon, but there was enough to be light. And then nothing. I went back to sleep. And the next morning, he got up before I did, and he came and told me, hey, look at this. And there were a bunch of, I guess, like little molehills and things like that around this area and on top of this hill. And he's like, hey, look at this footprint. And it was probably, I think he wore a size 12, and it was somewhere in the area of his size, a foot. But it wasn't his foot. And it was much wider and broader through the width and length of it. I'm like, well, yeah, wasn't that you that woke me up last night? Did you go to take a leak or what? He's like, I just now got up to pee. I didn't get up all night. I slept good. You know, Jim Beam may have helped that. But, you know, I can tell you, oh, well, y'all were drinking. Well, that never makes you hallucinate. Come on. So anyway, he's like, he showed me this footprint. I went up there and looked at it. I was like, well, that's kind of weird. And I made him swear 10 times that day that it wasn't him that did it. And, you know, good Christian boy, he went to Christian school and all that, which doesn't mean he was a great guy, but he's a really great guy anyway. But no, that was another instance there in that almost same spot. Because the next sort of kind of encounter happened just a little bit away from that. So what do you think about that one?
You know, I think that it's very interesting. I like that there was actually a track scene. That's pretty cool. When, yeah, it is weird though when you have stuff thrown at you, for sure. You know, I've had a tree pushed over in front of a campsite we're at before, and that stuff, I mean, that stuff can really get you. When you start to see a footprint like you guys did, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And as far as stuff being thrown at us, it never was, as far as we knew. But it was thrown in the creek coming towards us from a decent, you know, little ways away. And that just doesn't make sense, you know, as far as I know about Bigfoot and the way that they act sometimes. It's just weird that noise kept coming towards us from, let me guess, from the valley. Like I said, it's hard to tell how far away, but it was probably 20 minutes, and let me just guess, an eighth of a mile away. I could be off, I don't know, but it was weird hearing it far to us at the time away like that, and then coming towards us, and then hearing it from the south behind us. You know, what else does that? A lot of these things are, what could it be? Well, it's easier to say sometimes, what is it not? How many people would know that we were out there doing a camping thing when there's hardly any people out there anyway? You know, so many questions. And again, it's the rabbit hole.
It really is. You know, it's the rabbit hole. You find a place and the stuff starts to happen. And then, I mean, you can just keep going and going. But do you think you might ever go back someday?
Well, that's probably, I live in Oklahoma Ozarks now. And that's, that has a couple of different things related to Bigfoot for me now.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I've seen a whole lot. I've probably seen for sure 3 times in my life a Sasquatch.
Mm.
And this is East Texas, East Oklahoma. And actually, I can narrow that down to 2. But some of the other weird things that have happened really don't coincide with anything else. So if I can move on to the next one for East Texas there in that same area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This was in that same area on the other side of the road that cuts into that valley. And same guy, me and my best friend, we had gone deer hunting. And back then, there weren't a whole lot of deer in that area. But we deer hunted anyway. It's the only place we had to go. So we were on the other side of the road, I guess someone else's property. But, that's kind of the way we did things back then, younger guys. And my apologies for doing the wrong thing. But we were over there. We'd gone deer hunting on the other side. Didn't see anything. We got bored, still wanted to go hunting. So we went to the other side of the road, and it was a little bit higher elevation. And this was a lot more thickly wooded. And I'd had some success with calling in coyotes and the occasional bobcat that we hadn't got a shot at yet. But I was pretty good on the predator call. So we decided to do that. We went to this spot, picked out kind of a clearing in the woods that wasn't that big. Maybe if you looked at it from above, it was probably 20 yards around, more or less. It's not a good description, but you get the idea. He was on one side of that little clearing, I was on the other. Both of us had our backs against a decent sized tree, which was maybe 1.5 feet across. So it covered us from behind, and we could see each other and around each other towards the front and back. And I started blowing on the predator call. And I blew fairly loud at first, as you're supposed to do. And did that for about 30 seconds, wait a little bit. We're both kind of being real still, but looking around with our eyes. Don't hear, don't see anything. So I start doing it again with the predator call. Not as loud this time, in case anything's sneaking up. Do it for about maybe a minute this time. I stop. We're both looking around. Same situation as before. Don't really see anything. I go to blow on the predator call the 3rd time. Right as I'm bringing it up, I hear this loud breathing start. And I'm like, oh. And I know my eyes got huge. And I looked over at my best friend sitting over there against the other tree, like 15 feet away. I'm like, with my thumb and my rifle's laying across my chest or my thighs. I'm leaning against the bottom of the tree. So my hand is where I can move it without anything behind me seeing it. So I start pointing with my thumb for my best friend to look behind me because something is right there because it's suddenly breathing loud. And he's like, his eyes are big too, which I didn't even notice at first because I was like shocked. And I guess I made the first move because he is like shaking his head kind of slow, but enough that I can pick it up. And then he lifts his thumb up and he's trying to point back behind him. So I start looking behind him. I'm like, I shake my head at him. No. And I put my thumb back behind me a little bit quicker this time. No, it's behind me. And he's like shaking his head. At this point, we both start shaking our heads and pointing behind us. And we did not hear anything come up on us. We did not see anything. And this is in late fall. Leaves all over the place. We did not see or hear anything other than that breathing. And within probably 30 seconds, it just kind of went away. It didn't stop suddenly. It just kind of like ghosted away. I don't know how else to say it.
Some very strange things that you've encountered over the years, for sure.
I met at I'm trying to remember what year it was. I couldn't even tell you. There was a group, there probably still is, GCBRO, Gulf Coast Bigfoot Research Organization.
Yep, I got you.
Yep. Yeah. And they had their first ever conference, I guess, down somewhere just north of Houston. Me and my best friend, actually, I was living in South Texas at the time. We both were able to make it there. And I talked to their founder, Bobby Hamilton, and I told him about that, about the breathing. And he said that he had experienced the same thing, except it was in a pitch black night. And he walked outside of their deer hunting cabin to go to the outhouse. And he heard the same thing, but he had a flashlight. And he's like, I was terrified to turn that light on because I knew that thing was right there next to me. But he said when he turned the light on, there was nothing. And he spun around quick and he didn't see anything. But he said that breathing was that close to him that he knew he was either dead or he was about to crap his pants. And I don't know credibility of these people or anything like that, but I do know this is what happened way before I'd ever known about the internet or any of this stuff, other than, you know, of course, hearing Bigfoot stories as a kid.
Jared, thank you for calling in and sharing some interesting things that have happened to you over the years. It sounds like you probably might have some others to share in the future. And I would invite you to do so again if you feel like doing so at a later time. But thank you for calling in tonight.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Just want to take a few minutes to say thank you to you, all my listeners, for listening to the podcast. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list. If you or any relative were involved with Bigfoot sightings in the late 1970s or talked to Kevin or Clifford with the IBIC, I would love to talk to you. Please reach out. And to share anything Bigfoot related from this area, if you've got anything else you'd like to share from the Mount Shasta area, I'm not going to decline that either. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it.